Now, since the outbreak of the war, there have been more than 800 soldiers killed in battle. There are some grieving voices we really rarely have the opportunity to hear from, like those of grieving grandparents. There's a special grief retreat organized by the Friends of the Israel Defense Forces, FIDF, that supports grandparents suffering from this incredible loss, like Ruthie and Andy Weiser, whose grandson, Staff Sergeant Roe Weiser, was killed during a battle with Hamas terrorists during the October 7th massacre. They join me now here on The Rundown. Ruthie and Andy, thank you for being with us. I want to begin by talking about your grandson, Roe. From what I was reading up, he truly did die as a hero, because when Hamas terrorists stormed his base near Camp Shalom border crossing, he actually diverted their attention from some of the other soldiers, sacrificing himself so some of the others could be saved. And I'm curious, in your opinion, was this who your grandson was? What more can you tell me about Roe?
Go ahead.
No.
This is definitely who Roe was. Roe put his soldiers above himself, and he worried for their safety, and he took responsibility for his soldiers, knowing that it was his responsibility to do what had to be done, regardless of what the outcome might be. I'm sure he was very well aware of the danger that he faced, but he knew that this is something that had to be done. And yes, as a result of his actions, 12 or 13 soldiers are alive today.
Wow.
So, yes.
That is truly an incredible story. And so we do hear so many of those from October 7th and the nearly 15 months since then. But something that we do not often talk about is the grief of grandparents like yourself during this war. It's an incredibly difficult time, I can imagine. So tell me how it has been for you and why we don't hear about stories like yours more often.
We really should hear more about the stories, because it's an amazing thing. Having faced the shock, the absolute total grief, and no, it's different than a relative passing or something else, because this was a national tragedy and we were a part of it, and it was immense. And to have had the casualty division of the Israeli Defense Forces and the recognized that the grandparents also needed support and also needed help. They arranged for support groups, and we were fortunate enough to join a support group early on, within a couple of months of Roe's passing. And we went through several guided sessions, 12 guided sessions with professionals, and we have stayed as a coherent group. These grandparents from different backgrounds, different places, and it definitely helped us. It helped me. It helped Ruthie. It helped everybody. We're so grateful for that. And the truth is, we have stayed friends. We've continued group meetings on our own, because this is a phenomenon that needs to be recognized. Grandparents have more or less been standing in the background, standing Shiva, not sitting Shiva with their children. And it's the double pain of watching your own child suffer. And while you would do anything to protect them and help them, there's little you can do here.
It is heartbreaking to hear this, and remarkable that you have been able to find this community. And so through the FIDF, I understand you went on this grief retreat. And so tell me about that and how that's also helped you possibly cope, heal, and find others like yourself.
Well, the generosity, the love, the kindness that was shown to us when we got to Givat Olga was beyond remarkable. There was nothing that anyone wouldn't do for any of the grieving grandparents. They allowed us to speak with one another, to be in a community that allowed us to, I don't want to say grieve out loud, but we were able to be ourselves. We did not have to hold back. When you wanted to talk, you could laugh at your grief. You could cry with your grief, and everybody understood. It was beyond anything I could have imagined in terms of the generous spirit that was shown to the grandparents. And there were hundreds upon hundreds of people at this retreat. And mostly I would tell you that the saddest part of this retreat is looking around the room and recognizing that every single person in the room had been touched by this horror and by this grief. And yet the generosity of the spirit of generosity that existed, that came from the army, that came from the people that were in the FIDF, everyone showed such great, great generosity toward us, made us feel that we were seen and not the usual invisible in the background that we have adapted to.
The preparation, the attention to detail was just touching. They truly, truly wanted to make it a successful retreat, and the word retreat is absolutely correct. And we definitely, well, everybody benefited from it. Right. And as Ruthie said, we had different lectures, different activities, and each one of them allowed us to meet others who are going through who went or are going through the same stresses and the same grief that we are.
It sounds like an incredibly open space, which is so important during these times to make people like yourself, grandparents of these fallen soldiers, finally feel seen. Ruthie and Andy, thank you so much for sharing more about this experience and for sharing about your grandson, Rowie, as well.
Before we go, do we have
Please.
1 minute to just thank the FIDF and to thank the
But Manachayal,
the Vad Lema'an HaChayal, the Association for Israel Soldiers, and the division of the IDF for the Nifgaim, for the casualties. Thank you. Thank you.
And thank you guys for
Thank
putting
you.
this message out there and letting more people know about the great work FIDF is doing. Ruthie and Andy, thank you so much for joining us on The Rundown.